so much, but what makes college football great? Why is it your favorite sport? Why should everybody tune into it? And why should everybody listen to us? And where does our passion lie within the sport? Jake, you go first.
Yeah, I know that we've answered this question probably in bits and pieces in our lifetime, but I'm going to try to go outside the box and an answer that I haven't really thought about in a while or haven't really shared. The reason personally that I have come to love college football, and it's really stemmed from honestly doing this the last couple of years, as well as like just going on like going to different environments and like talking to people. College football to me is something that just connects a lot of different people from different places. One common interest. And it's just love the sport, the love for the program, the passion that they have. You know, we're going to stay on college football here, but the world isn't all sunshine and roses, and we have a lot of differences, specifically online with how we treat people sometimes. But when you get to the nuts and bolts of it, like college football and the passion I have for the Iowa State Cyclones, Cam, you have for Nebraska, like we all have that common theme, that common ground together. We may hate each other for rivals, things like that, but like it's the sport that we love so much. And like I said, going to like West Virginia and BYU and things I've done in the past, just like hearing from other people about their experiences, why they love going to games and things like that. And as someone who, you know, I may put a podcast, I'm not like the most, I wouldn't say I'm the most outgoing person in the world, but when it comes to finding a common ground with a stranger, just talking about college football, maybe their experience with the sport is something I just absolutely love doing and love talking to people about.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I think just the different opinions and topics, and that's kind of how I'll roll into mine is I love college football because I think it's the only sport on the national scale where it's of size of everybody loves football, right? Well, college football gives everybody the chance to have representation from California to Maine, from Washington to Florida. There's teams everywhere. There's going to be multiple within a state, whether it's at the FBS level or not, who cares? You still have a college football team somewhere that you can cheer for, whether it's South Dakota State or University of South Dakota, go all the way down to Texas. How many programs do they have maybe that not are the University of Texas or A&M? It's just great. It's my state versus your state. It's a reason to talk trash. It's something to look forward to. And having representation is huge because I think that's a big time component onto why we find a lot of our passion into college football rather than the NFL is, you know, the NFL, there's 32 teams. There's only 32 cities that can be in. If they're not in their city where you can consistently go be a part of the atmosphere, where it's a part on your daily sports talk radio, things like that attribute to your fandom. And the NFL just doesn't give it as much as college football offers it up to people just because of how diverse the sport is in different areas. I think traditions are a huge part of college football that you always hear, but even some traditions that you may not hear about a lot, but just the smaller ones, just singing songs at games, how the entire fan base sings Dixieland Delight at Alabama, or just travel across the country. And how about Enter Sandman to run into a Virginia Tech game, whether it's a Thursday night or a Saturday night, doesn't matter. You could think everything is a Friday night and nobody has work the next day because they're all so dedicated to be a fan of that team and so within the moment. It's gotten to me the last few years that I look forward to this as much as anybody would look forward to a vacation that works 90 hours a week, right? Like I look at a Nebraska football game, and to me, that is, I'm pushing the Nebraska season. This is now my next thing I'm looking forward to is, late August, we'll be back in the stadium. I get to enjoy, a slice of Valentino's pizza, just those little small things I haven't taken for granted, just that college football offers us. Because even the pros, they have these big menu items, gigantic cookies, even down to the smaller scale. I just want a piece of pizza out of a cardboard box in Memorial Stadium. Name one other, or name an NFL team. You can't because it doesn't apply, and it doesn't apply to most colleges. But Nebraska's stadium, if you didn't know this, Memorial Stadium becomes the third highest populated area in Nebraska on game day. Memorial Stadium itself, 90,000 people is the third highest population in Nebraska. All the state comes together in one spot and equivalates to the third highest population. That's the coolest thing ever, and it can only be a part of college football. So I love it. All the way down to the smallest minuscule things through and through. It's just the best sport in the world. And if you're not watching it, you're missing out. And the NFL will never offer and match the energy that college football will provide everyone. JP.
Yeah, I wrote down like bullet points because I don't want to try and write this out like and try to follow word by word and be a little more authentic with it. I think the first thing that comes to mind is the uniqueness, and it's tied with traditions. It's tied with the school that you either attended or you've been a fan of forever. Just what makes each school unique is so different than the next, right? Like there are stories you'll hear at Appalachian State that you won't hear at Stanford, that you won't hear at UCLA, that you won't hear at Sam Houston, that you won't hear at Michigan. Like it's all very different, right? And people take real pride in that. Like it feels very true to the roots of the school. It feels very true to the roots of the state that it's in, the town that it's in, and what kind of happens within a fan base of that. I feel like that holds a lot of pride. Like you can be a Dallas Cowboy fan in the state of Alabama. And like you can like feel like some passion for the star and like, that whole song and dance, but to me, it's not the same thing as this kid that grew up in middle of nowhere, Ohio, and just is a massive Ohio State fan, and like he feels connected to that school. It's very Ohio, like it's how they do. Like I don't know, I feel like the organizations and the schools do a lot better to connect with the areas around them and become kind of part of that region and that state. And obviously, there's a lot of states with multiple schools. Like you look at Iowa, that's a state of over 3 million, and it's split in half between two major universities. If there was a pro team here, like I feel like it would lose its luster. Like it just wouldn't hold a candle because a lot of the people that are fans of Iowa State or Iowa went to school there or have been going to these games forever, have, had family traditions tied into universities that you could never, like there's going to be professional stories about what stories of families have been going to Pittsburgh Steeler games forever or Bengal games forever. And they're like, that's their thing. But you can't walk into that atmosphere and tell me that, Kinnick or Jack Trice is not better than walking into an NFL stadium or walking into, if App is good, like into Brewer Stadium, Kid Brewer Stadium, and walking in and be like, this place is just electric and just feel electricity through it and like some real passion and stuff through it. It's as close as you can get to a cult without calling yourself a cult as college football fandom
Yes.
in some ways. Like you're undividedly like about this overarching idea. Basically is what it is this idea, is this fandom, this school, this team. And it's all about, that logo on the side and the name across the front. And everybody's got the same idea and they'll defend it till they die, but it's not quite a cult, but it's as close as you can get to one without being it. And then the last thing is like the abundance of random stars and stories that come out of this sport. You turn on the NFL, most stars and stories are going to, there's 5 or 6 in the NFL that come out every year and they're like, that's a star. He'll be there for another 8 years or whatever. But random Tuesday nights in the MAC, you're going to hear a name. Somebody's going to remember that name for the rest of their life. Like whether they bet on the game, they were just watching the game, something happens in that game. Jordan Lynch isn't a name that's ever going to make sense to the NFL, but you'll never forget that name if you're a college football fan. You go through every conference, every team, and there's just a random story or star that pops up and you'll never forget. We'll never forget Grayson McCall's time at Coastal. You'll never forget Ashton Jeanty at Boise State. You'll never forget all these random things, right? Chris Davis at Auburn, like just random things that happen that make the story or the sport so great. And the story is just so incredible. I just think it holds everything above the NFL and what that league is.
I was going to say too, like, doesn't college football, I know now more than ever, it's kind of going away from that, but doesn't it feel like a working class product compared to the NFL? Whereas
corporatized.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure Ohio State fans would beg to differ, but college football tickets to at least 1 or 2, 3 games a year are pretty reasonable. Like how many people I bet you could walk down the street and meet a lot more people who have attended maybe a college football game than a NFL game just because of the prices. Maybe it's where you live, where like an NFL city is and things like that, but it just feels like it appeals to like it's easier said than done being from Iowa and Nebraska that, this is our pro team. And for the most part, I mean, Nebraska has got some pretty high tickets, but I'm sure you could go to the UTEP game, first game of the year with your kids, make them experience that in Memorial Stadium for a decent dollar. It's not going to run you dry. Whereas going to see the Vikings and Panthers is probably triple the price. You know what I mean? So I feel like it appeals more to the working class as well, and just everybody can relate to that. I would love to see that study. Like, how many people have been to a college football game and how many people have been to an NFL game.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to put it. I think we oftentimes are not compare the NFL to college football throughout this show, just because that's the conversation that always pops up. I want to ask you guys one question to finish it. What do you guys feel on they show you, everybody always says college football is full of blowouts. That's what they all say, right? All NFL fans. It's just there's so many blowouts. Everybody blows everybody out. What is your response to that?
There's 134 teams. There's a lot more variability.
It's sample size. Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, didn't Philadelphia not beat Washington by 40 points this weekend?
Yeah. I was going to say that and just like, I don't know where people got the perception of every game in the NFL is like down to the wire too. Obviously it's more close. There's 32 teams. Like you guys said, the parity is way bigger, but
right.
It's not about
professional. It's the best 32 teams in the world. It's the best X amount of players in the world. That's like comparing Premier League soccer to like local high school soccer here in Iowa. Like it's different because there's I don't know how many Premier League teams there are. If I'm being completely honest with you, there's hundreds and hundreds of teams here in Iowa of different levels, right? So like
the difference between Alabama and Sam Houston is not even remotely the same between the Panthers and the Chiefs, right? I mean, the Chiefs took the Panthers to the wire, but I don't know when the argument ever became about college football, like how many close games there are. I don't think that's just
you needed an extra piece of ammo. They couldn't think of anything else. They're like, oh, there's blowouts. There's blowouts.
And here's the deal, guys. There are 134 teams, and if you care about the sport enough and you sit down and watch football all day, there are at least probably 3 really good close games. You just got to go out there and find them. I'm sorry, not every Alabama-Ohio State game is down to the absolute last second wire. That's just not how the college game works. That's not how any college sport works, for that matter. If you watch college basketball or college soccer, I don't know.
I also make the argument, I hear pretty often of people say, well, the overall football's better. Yeah, no shit. It's made up of college football all-stars. Like you realize at one point in 98.9% of those careers, those guys were really good in college. Like at one point they were that level in college. They were the different person that was putting up statistics in college that got them to the NFL most of the time. Sometimes you have those stories here and there, but overall, yes, the football is going to be better. One, because the sample size is different. If you had 134 NFL teams, I promise you there'd be some bad football mixed in there.
Well,
so
I'd make the argument too, and I go back and forth on this all the time as I grew up playing basketball most of my life. Like the difference between bad basketball and good basketball is insurmountable. Like not so clean, like rugged college football, depending on the matchups. Maybe it's Army Navy. It's not the cleanest, it's not the most beautiful football in the world, but it's still awesome to watch. I think ugly football can be masked up better than basketball. And at the same time, I don't think the NFL is perfect either, because I think it's becoming more of a just the sport of football in general is becoming more of a 7-on-7 kind of league. Like I think quarterback play in the NFL is not nearly as good as it was a decade ago. I know that's not our conversation, but for just to that argument, I would argue the NFL's play hasn't been as perfect either.
I wouldn't say no to that. I mean, you don't have outside of Patrick Mahomes conversation, you don't have like the Tom Brady or the Peyton Manning that you had where there's going to be battles like that. Like you're going to compare that to Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Okay. But NFL, let's leave it there. I wanted to talk a little bit on why college football is the best sport on the earth.